Hi Arielle, welcome to our brand new In Focus Creative Master Series.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very happy to have you here. Maybe you can give a little bit of intro about yourself and how you find yourself leading strategy at Burnett now.
Sure. My name is Arielle. I'm originally from the United States, and I've been in Asia for about 10 years now. I started out in Chicago, and my goal in life was to be a foreign correspondent for CNN. But I had a really rude reality check when I was first posted in Fargo, North Dakota. And I was sent there in the dead of the winter. And it really wasn't anything that I had expected would be the life of a foreign correspondent. And so I decided to take an internship in PR, and it was at a company called Burnett in Chicago. I was being exposed at the time to this whole new world of brands and advertising, and I found it really, really interesting. I could tell pretty quickly that I probably wasn't made right to be a suit, but I was really interested in strategy. And I've always just loved understanding and learning about people and culture. And so I just made it a goal to get into strategy. And so I was begging HR all the time, please, send me abroad, send me overseas. I want to go to Asia. And eventually someone listened.
That's amazing. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So let's kick things off with a little segment I like to call the Culture Bowl. We prepared a whole range of little words here from TikTok slang and like cultural norms as well in this little bowl right here. So what do you pick one, open it up, read it, and see if you know what it means? Let's find out.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Ooh, I do know this one. Okay, I know this one.
So
the first one is Riz.
Okay.
Which I believe is short for charisma. So it's someone who has a lot of game. So in a sentence, it would be like, oh, he's got a lot of Riz, or I rizzed somebody up.
You do know your stuff, okay? That's absolutely correct, yeah. You do have some Riz, huh? You do some Riz. All right, let's do one more.
All right.
That one's too easy. Let's do one more.
Okay, this one is a beige flag. I actually know this one too.
Okay.
I think I know this one.
Please.
Okay, so I think this is an evolution of red flag and green flag when you're dating someone.
Yeah.
And this is all about it's not a red flag in where they're showing some kind of behavior or sign that would really freak you out, but it's one that would make you pause. Yeah, I'm seeing someone and they're showing a lot of beige flags.
Okay, well,
maybe.
Okay.
Is that it? I don't know.
Yeah,
Is that how they say it?
Very good, Arielle. You do know your trends, okay. And you know how trends is moving so fast on TikTok. There's something new almost every other day. So how do you stay on top of trends, stay updated with trends with your team?
So with my team, we have a weekly session called Culture Pulse, and everyone is responsible for bringing one piece of interesting information or observation that they saw during that week. It could be a trend, it could be a news article, and we just talk about it. And it's really just to kind of understand what's happening. So even in this last week, we talked about an avocado deity that NUS students are praying to so that they do well on test exams. We talked about Hope Core, this trend that's emerging and where people are looking towards feeling more optimistic about everything. And we compile it into hundreds of these, we call them pulses, cultural pulses.
Yeah.
And usually on a quarterly basis, we'll start to wrap that together and put it into something that resembles, more of a traditional thought leadership piece. So whether we're working on a campaign or we're pitching a new piece of business, we have this repository of trends and observations and pulses of things that are happening in culture that we can easily tap into.
And speaking of campaign, how do you find that balance, of authenticity and the polished requirements of a campaign?
It's interesting with TikTok because people's expectation of what brands need to look like has definitely changed.
Yeah.
So, you can have almost an unvarnished lo-fi look, and that is now acceptable.
Yeah.
It's really about being authentic, and especially authentic as well to the platform that you're on. And we can't look at a piece of creative campaign work for TikTok in the same way that we would for a 100-meter long outdoor billboard. And when brands start to think that they need to be that polished or they need to always look like that, they end up hindering themselves in the process and becoming so slow that they can't actually react in culture and at the speed of culture.
So Arielle, how do you ensure that the content you create, resonates with your TikTok audiences?
You definitely need a team that is well-skilled and is also able to act in an agile manner to respond.
Yeah.
But at the core, you also really need to make sure that what you're saying as a brand is true to your brand purpose, however that manifests. consumers are really good at sniffing inauthenticity.
Right.
And so the second that it starts to feel forced or fake, that's when really people will disengage with it or not find it interesting or scroll past you.
And I do hear this from some brands every now and then, right? That their audiences are not on TikTok. So what do you have to say about that?
Not true.
Yeah? Not-
My 65-year-old father-in-law from the Philippines is on
Right.
TikTok. He is watching restoration videos. And so there is content for everybody. And of course, you know, there are definitely audiences that have probably there's more propensity for them to be on
Right.
it.
So is it better to focus on short-term strategies, you know, viral moments, or long-term? What do you
I think if a brand, if you're always trying to ground yourself in trends, that's probably not a strategy for success. It's really important to first understand people, to understand their behavior. You can set up a process in order to respond quickly and in a very agile manner to trends. But if your goal is just to jump on every single trend, you're just going to be a follower. And you're probably not going to be setting that brand up for success.
Yeah, exactly right. Short-term trend viral moments has its place, not all the time, but has its place in a longer-term strategy. Yeah, I think a lot of times, like brands usually come to us and say that, oh, we're not fast enough, we don't react fast enough, you know, we're gonna miss this trend, and then they lose it forever. But no, as long as you're part of a larger conversation with the community, I think you'll be all right. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're keeping, you know, a pulse on culture and what's happening, and you also then set up a process in order to react to it and to respond to it, that's really the best way that you can set yourself up. So that then when something does happen and it makes sense for your brand to play a role, you've got everything in place so that you can actually make something happen with it.
That's amazing. Like a culture pulse meetings.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Arielle, can you share a successful campaign, you know, where a TikTok trend has really boosted a campaign's performance and result?
Sure. We have a great example from our office in Indonesia, working with McDonald's, and it was called the Untranslatable Ad. And you know, music being one of the languages of TikTok, they tapped into it and they created a tune for McDonald's in Japanese, given the popularity of Japanese culture in Indonesia. And basically, they had tons of people singing a song without speaking Japanese, but loving the song and the tune that went with it. And this song became one of the top of the charts. And it was only released once it got to that point that the song was actually entirely about one of McDonald's burgers.
Yeah, actually, there's so many songs I don't know the meanings to, but they're so catchy, you know. So how did the campaign perform, actually, Arielle?
Amazingly well. The awareness of this campaign was through the roof because you have a song that's viral and, you know, topping the charts. And then in terms of the actual product sales, they hit all of their targets and way beyond. So it, you know, it really tapped into culture. It had a strong insight at the core, and it used the platform in the right way to really connect with the audience.
Wow, we're loving it. All right. Since we're talking about performance, have there been any instances where, you know, TikTok trend didn't perform as well or as expected?
Definitely, it happens all the time. But what I will say is that as long as you're not being offensive, it's okay. The worst thing then really is that you're just ignored, that the content doesn't really go anywhere or isn't viewed or isn't shared. And that's not such a bad thing after all. It's really about testing and trying and experimenting. And that's the mindset that brands have to have with TikTok. And really, we can take a lot of cues from our customers, right? Like, if you look at consumers online and on TikTok, they make themselves so vulnerable. Like, they're willing to share their inner monologue,
Exactly.
something that they found that was funny,
Yeah.
and that requires a lot of bravery. And, you know, some of them do really, really well, the things that they post. Some of them don't get as much attention. But there's always surprises. So it really goes to show that, you know, as much as we try and crack the magic formula, we're all still kind of figuring it out.
Right.
Even at Burnett, we had a McDonald's campaign a couple years ago. And it was a panel, an outdoor digital panel, where people could come and scream at this panel and then get a free ice cream cone. This campaign wasn't even on my radar as something that was going to become really big. But what happened is that it launched on the same day that masks became optional in Singapore. So this is coming out of the pandemic.
That's great, yeah.
And people really felt something, like taking
Yeah.
their mask off, coming up to the screen, screaming for ice cream, and just going berserk. And of course, there was one student who basically embodied all of the pent-up frustration of the entire nation, screaming at this screen. And that single video received 63 million views on
Wow,
TikTok.
yeah.
which is incredible, especially when you look at Singapore as a country, which only has about 5 to 6 million people as a total population. So had we been planning for that to go viral and expecting it to, it probably wouldn't happen. It's just something that completely surprised us. And that's kind of the beauty and the magic of TikTok, is that it's basically a playground. When you have that mindset and you just try, you will have something potentially that really does become big. But you'll never get there if you don't experiment.
I love how you bring it up. It's a test and learn mindset, right? We're talking about
Exactly.
here.
It's definitely
and there is no one-size-fits-all strategy on TikTok.
For
It's
sure.
so robust and diverse. There's so much different content out there. You just got to try it out, see what it works.
As long as it makes sense for your brand, and it shows your brand purpose however that manifests, you really can't go wrong.
It's been great chatting with you today.
Great chatting with you too.
Yeah, and just want to bring up some pointers, great things you said earlier. The first one is brands being more vulnerable,
Yes.
being more approachable on TikTok, being more lo-fi. And the second one is TikTok as a language,
Yes.
reaching out to communities and just understanding what people really want.
Right. As a way that people express themselves.
And lastly, the human first experience. That's my personal favorite. And you mentioned the Culture Pulse meetings earlier. We have a whole bunch of creative tools that could really help you out as well in those meetings. Creative Center, if you remember earlier, from
Yes.
earlier, yeah. Ideation, trends, audio, creators. And something even newer that's up and coming is our Symphony Creative Studio Suite.
Amazing.
AIGC
Send them our
tools.
way. We'll definitely check them out.
All right, thank you, promise.
Pinky promise.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. That's episode 1 on In Focus Creative Masters. Watch this space, and see you in the next one.